All right, Crystal, what's on your radar?
Well, workers for Warrior Met Coal are entering their fourth week of a strike that started April 1st when they overwhelmingly rejected an insulting contract that was offered by the company. As one striking worker told the World Socialist website, "All we're asking for is the wages we had in 2016. That's it. If we don't stand up for ourselves now, we are going to lose everything. The company will take what they can get out of us and leave. Just take it and go." So here's the backstory. Warrior Met Coal used to be called Walter Energy, but bad investments forced that company into bankruptcy. This has been no problem, of course, for the CEO of the company who drove the company into bankruptcy, yet continues to reap multi-million-dollar salaries in spite of that mismanagement. But the workers, of course, were forced to take a giant haircut. In other words, the workers rescued this company. They enabled these executives to make million-dollar salaries, and yet now they're being repaid with a middle finger in their face. Out of bankruptcy, Walter Energy was essentially taken over by private equity giants like Apollo Global Management, Blackstone, and KKR. In their corporate social responsibility report, the new glossy private equity-owned entity, Warrior Met Coal, describes itself as an environmentally and socially minded leading U.S.-based producer and exporter of high-quality metallurgical coal for the global steel industry. Particularly gross that they go out of their way to tout their diversity and inclusion statistics. Are we supposed to feel better that they're screwing over a lot of black workers in addition to the white ones? Naturally, their corporate social responsibility report doesn't mention wages, healthcare, or labor rights. The company is using every aggressive strike-breaking tactic in the book to keep their profits rolling in and get these workers back underground mining the coal that pays these execs their fat salaries. Workers told the World Socialist website that the company is surveilling pickets with drones. They have hired thugs that spy on the workers in the woods. They've also brought in scabs who've been ushered through the picket line by local sheriff's deputies from Bibb and Tuscaloosa County. And they've gotten backup from local judges who granted injunctions limiting the number of picketers. Now, this is just a little glimpse into how absurdly stacked the system is against workers. Legally, all the labor movement can really do in response to these spies, intimidation, and law enforcement-backed strike-breaking tactics is holding unity rallies with leaders and members from other unions coming to offer the workers moral support. The UMWA has provided $50,000 to a strike fund, and they're also providing for the wages and health care of the striking workers. But more militant tactics, those are largely banned. Now, the PRO Act would improve the situation. It would still unfortunately allow the company to seek those injunctions, limiting picketers. But it would ban hiring scabs as permanent replacements and would also legalize secondary strikes and boycotts, which of course could help put more pressure on all aspects of the company's operation. In a way, though, these workers are lucky. At least they have a union that can give them some voice, some small modicum of power, some ability to leverage their solidarity. It's a rarity these days, to say the least. But there's a depressing quality to all these fights. The deja vu nature of it, the sense that even if these workers win some concessions and better wages in their David versus Goliath battle, 9.9 times out of 10, the workers get nothing. The sadness of realizing that they have to fight so hard and risk so much just for the right to sacrifice their bodies to corporate greed at 2016's pay rate. It should be a crime that they have to risk everything just for the right to make what they were making 5 years ago. We covered 2 summers back how miners had to literally block a coal train on the tracks in order to get the pay that they had worked for and were owed. Now, eventually they won that pay. And I guess that's what counts for a victory. When you're able, through literally throwing your body on the train tracks, to just get the bare minimum of what's owed to you. All the while with the very real knowledge that whatever quality of life you've been able through backbreaking labor and force of will to obtain is slowly and then quickly slipping away from your grasp. I finally, over the weekend, watched the classic movie Matewan about the way black, white, and immigrant coal miners in West Virginia fought to unionize. At the time, of course, miners were forced to live in coal camps. Everything, including their home, was company property. They were paid in scrip that was only good at the company store. System was, of course, rigged to keep miners desperate and hopelessly in debt to the company, so they had no choice but to toil endlessly until their bodies just wore out or they died. Now, I don't want to say there's been no progress between then and now. Pinkerton goons can't literally shoot you dead with impunity the way they once did. The New Deal did usher in a more equally shared prosperity. But since the onset of the Reagan era, all of the broader victories won have just kept being eaten away and eaten away and eaten away. until you find yourself in week 4 of a strike to get back to what you were earning 5 years ago. Now, they say those who don't learn history are doomed to repeat it. Seems like we're circling back to Matewan. The script in the company store, well, they're illegal now, so the mechanisms are a little less direct, a little more sophisticated. But is the system really all that different? Workers paid too little, forced into debt, kept desperate, stability always just out of reach. Now, in some ways, coal mining is a job of the past tied to an old industry with a distinct death rattle about it. But the fights they're having, the ways they're being screwed by their new private equity bosses, well, those struggles are fully modern, cutting edge even. I hope these miners get what they're asking for, but we should all feel ashamed that they even have to ask. And Sagar, there's so much here. First of all, the fact that, of course, out of bankruptcy, now it's owned by this private equity giant who put out their corporate social responsibility. They're so environmentally friendly. They're so into diversity and inclusion. Meanwhile, from the workers' perspective, they gave up so much to rescue this company, to make sure that it didn't completely go under. All they want is to get back to where they were in 2016, and the company will do anything they can to avoid that outcome. Meanwhile, paying the CEO who brought the company into bankruptcy millions of dollars every year.
This is the problem that we always have, which is that unions they generally negotiate in better faith than the management do, right? And you saw this in the auto bailout and more.
It's true.
They will take the cuts. They take 30%, 40% cut on the line in terms of their wages at the promise that usually management is like, we just need you guys to take this cut so we can save the company, we can, buyouts, etc. And then what happens? Prosperity comes back, and then there comes time to raise the wage back, and then they get maybe 20% back. You're still making 80% less. So what happened here? And this is another classic situation, and where it goes to show, and actually why I hate this most is that it really does go and create a completely not adversarial, but like almost an irreconcilable difference, which is if you're a union in the future, what incentive do you have to agree to a pay cut? You don't know if you'll ever get it back. The whole thing is trust, and over again. In the auto industry, in mining, steel manufacturing, and more, at almost every turn, management never comes forward and says, yeah, you're right, like we're making money now, and we can give you X, or CEO is making millions and the workers are not getting paid back. So you just get into a hellscape. And I think that this is terrible for both the industry, for the workers, and often for the long term of the company. What's going to happen? Now you're on strike. Now you're losing millions, right?
Yeah.
And even if they do come back and they negotiate, it's just going to still be this ridiculous thing where all they had to do, and it's like we were talking about this with Bezos, all Bezos has to do, all he has to do is take the money he gained in the year 2020 and allocate it to his work. And they would be the richest people, the richest workers in America. And he just won't do it. And I will truly never understand that impulse. And it just creates, it's like you have what's coming to you. That really is how I feel.
You remember when we covered the miners
of course,
who were on, we talked to this.
It was one of the first viral things we did.
Those guys, those guys were so brave and incredible. And ultimately they were able to win. They worked for this pay. They were actually, the mines were on a shutdown for that week. So a lot of them went, they drove down to Florida, enjoying their time off. And then all of a sudden, they see the paychecks that had hit their accounts get clawed back out of their accounts. So suddenly their car payments are bounced, their mortgage payments are bounced. They're like, what the hell is going on here? So just literally in order to get the money that they worked for and had hit their account already, they had to stop a coal train in its tracks and camp out there for weeks just in order. And that's what's so depressing is like having to fight so hard just to literally get the bare minimum of what's owed to you. There was another story we covered about at the beginning of coronavirus. Remember, there were all these largely women who walked out of a poultry processing plant.
Right.
And again, they won concessions, hard fought. They had to walk out and picket and all the risks that comes with that as like a low wage worker. And what did they win in return? They're able to take off work when they get coronavirus to not come in and infect. Like, again, the fact that you have to fight for this is insane. And so when that is where the line is drawn, that you have to like literally risk your job and your body in order to get the bare minimum of what they agreed to give you in the first place, or what any basic standard of human decency says you should have, then anything beyond that is just completely off the table. And so, God, I hope these workers are able to pull this off, but it is an overall very depressing state of affairs and outrageous that they even have to picket in order to get this pay.
No, I think that's exactly right.
All right, Sagar, looking forward to your radar. That's next.